I mean, you saw us basically bleed up all day from like 29 to like 31 and then 32. And then when we hit like 32.5, we like basically teleported to 35 in like literally 15 seconds, right?
I wanted to talk about the options markets and how it's been affecting prices, because we've seen Bitcoin do really well this year. I mean, it's, like you said, it's up over 100% year to date. It's the top performing, asset class, let's say, of the year. And part of it was when it broke 30, it just exploded in a way. It exploded all the way up to 35 really quickly, and it caught a lot of people by surprise. But you folks over at Galaxy, laid it out that this is probably related to some of these dynamics happening in the option markets, a so-called gamma squeeze. And for somebody who's not familiar, who's listening, I was wondering if you could break down, what is a gamma squeeze and why do you see this like really explosive price action when these gamma squeezes happen?
Yeah, so I would say a couple things before specifically the gamma squeeze at the end of October that happened, and it was one, and it was foreseeable. I mean, we had talked about it on our podcast, Galaxy Brains, 2 or 3 weeks before.
Mm-hmm.
But look, options volumes have become a bigger and bigger part of the overall cryptocurrency market in general. There's some reasons for that. One major one is that it's much harder to gain leverage in this market than it was during the prior bull market. Part of that's because a lot of the lenders went out of business that were providing that leverage, but you can use options to gain leverage. And so many do. It's also in general, I mean, I'm not an options trader, but but there are many more nuanced ways to express your view on the price of an asset using options than there are with pretty much any other trading strategy, right? Or trading instrument. And the traders of Bitcoin are becoming more sophisticated. So they want more sophisticated ways to express their view on the market. I think what happened in September and October, I mean, effectively, a gamma squeeze is essentially when there's significant demand for short dated calls, right? So a call is the option is a bullish option that suggests that you want upside exposure, right? So you're buying the right to sell the Bitcoin at the higher price, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
future. So um, and when there's a lot of demand for those short dated upside calls, someone's got to sell those, right? Someone's taking a view. A dealer typically is offering those into the market, right? So they're
Yep.
selling
They're on
selling
the other
calls
side
to
of that
people that are buying.
contract. Yep.
Exactly. And there is someone on the other side of every options trade, right? So and of course where the two parties meet is where the option itself trades, the price of buying or selling the option. What I think what happened is a lot of the market was really sort of caught off guard by how bullish a lot of the dealers, in particular, the dealer market was caught off guard by how bullish the market sentiment for the Bitcoin ETFs would become,
Mm.
how quickly, right? And um, so they sold a lot of options. They sold a lot of calls,
Yeah.
right? Because especially like if you think about like Asia not having its sort of ear to the ground of the sentiment in the US, right? The ETF story isn't a US story, right? It's not, there are already ETPs and across Europe, there's ETFs in Canada and Brazil, like they're right. When we say the ETF, we mean the world's largest $44 trillion stock market, the US, right? So um, I think there were, whether retail or other institutional investors effectively got long and bullish sooner than the dealers sort of realized. And then that, if you remember that Monday at the end of October, I think would have been like the 26th, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the 23rd. So the dealers, to hedge their exposure, right, can do a number of things. They can buy the calls back, like they can buy spot to help stay delta neutral. The thing is when you get really close to an expiry, and there were two that week, the October expiries were in that week, like where these calls mature, right, and either pay or don't pay. There's not a lot of supply, right? I mean, people by that moment, in the case of that last day, they've decided whether they're going to hold or sell this
Yep.
option already, right? There were not a lot of people there to sell the options, the calls back to the dealers. And really at that point, I mean, the main way to try to hedge yourself is to then buy buy the underlying spot instrument, in this case, Bitcoin. So I mean, we watch the dealer. We have some proprietary ways of looking at the public options market data, where we try to ascribe, what is a dealer and what is not, like for the trades that we can see. And we watch that because that can have an outsized impact. Now, it doesn't always have an impact, right? Like the gamma squeeze is particularly something that can happen right up, bumping up against an expiry.
Got it.
So, I mean, I don't think that's the cause of the move that we saw on October 23rd, but it enhanced
It
it. It
enhanced it.
amplifies it. And that's what you saw. I mean, you saw us basically bleed up all day from like 29 to like 31 and then 32. And then when we hit like 32.5, we like basically teleported to 35 in like literally 15 seconds. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think caused that. That's what we said we thought could happen. I mean, I didn't like go onto like, exchanges and like see if like a known dealer on chain address like received Bitcoin at that exact moment.
Well, it just makes sense,
That's our
right?
assessment of what happened. But options markets are more important in Bitcoin today than ever before.
Yeah. So when the price moved up like 1%, you said these dealers would approximately have to buy like 20 million, Bitcoins for it to stay
Yeah. So
delta
that's
neutral. It's basically to stay like appropriately hedged in their rest of their book, essentially. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's on short time frames, right? So some people are like, "Oh my god, 1 million, that's nothing." And that's the voice of
Yeah.
people. They're like, "That's nothing, Alex. What are you thinking?" And I'm like, "Well, the thing is it's all at once. It's right away, right?
Yeah.
It's like it could be immediate, and especially when you're bumping right up against that expiry, right? I mean, basically the market for those options is very, very tight at that moment because they're about to expire. And yeah,
And
so
they're
that is what gamma is. It's effectively the amount that you need to hedge, the amount of delta you need to buy for every 1% move, right? And that's just
yeah, and they
I'm not an expert in all the quote unquote the Greeks, the right, but
yeah. No, it
that
makes sense.
but gamma is one of these things that options traders have to look at, and that is effectively what it is. I would say it's the cost of staying delta neutral, which means sort of net flat, right? Because if you're a dealer, you're not necessarily but theoretically you're a service provider. You're not trying to take a directional view all the time. You may want to be
No, you don't wanna be
neutral.
yeah.
So yeah,
You don't
so
wanna
it's
be
the
exposed to
cost of
the
staying
underlying spot
neutral is
price. You wanna, hedge that, and it makes sense to me because like, the options, the open interest on the options they're near, like, all-time highs, right? Like, levels not seen since
yeah,
2021, but at the same time, you see the trading volumes of spot really, really low. I mean, I just saw
right.
some data from, I think, CC Data that said that about $26 million dollars in the spot market will move the price 1%. But you're telling me with each 1% move upwards, these dealers basically have to buy 20 million or
Yeah.
so. So like that's just the dealers. And so you have this
I mean, they
dynamic,
can
right?
hedge other ways if
Yeah.
they can hedge other ways, right? I mean, I
Yes.
think that's why the gamma squeeze doesn't happen like every day, right? Like there's a peculiar set
Like
of
up into the expirations.
conditions.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Particularly well, and especially that, owners of calls were about to be in the money, right? Like they're not gonna it's gonna be very
Yeah.
expensive to buy them back if they'll even sell them to you on that day at that time.
Right.
But yes, that's exactly right. I mean, the amount of open interest on options and volumes and options is huge, and spot volumes are low, like they're still low, right? And this is when I was talking about liquidity earlier. I mean, I looked at data for the end of September, looking at on exchange Bitcoin traded volume in BTC terms, right? So which is I like because it helps control for price, right? Like the
Mhm.
changes in price. The lowest monthly volume since December 2016,
2016?
right?
Holy crap.
That's what I saw. Yeah, I
That's
think
even farther than I that's
um
crazy. I knew it was like lower was
this
it
is
before
this is
FTX,
me looking at
but
the block.
wow.
Yeah, this is me looking at the block, but I mean, like, I mean, it's no, dude, that's before yet. It's so
That's
early, is what I'm
insane.
saying. Like,
That's
there really
insane.
is not nearly as much on chain, and it shouldn't surprise because we're all seeing these charts about Bitcoin on exchanges, and like, and you had it wasn't just people that blew up in 22. Like, you had market makers exit. Like, there are some still, sure, but there are fewer, right? There is genuinely less liquidity on exchange.
You did see some big
So
market
yes,
makers leave, right? I think Jane Street and Jump, like I think they kind of backed out, right? Like some of these bigger
yeah,
market
and
making firms.
yeah, I don't recall like specifically, but yes, I mean, like, and I think there's others that may not have even said that they are, but have really like wound down or
Yeah.
like lessened their
And then
involvement. So
the bear market
I
itself
mean,
too, the decline in prices, drop sentiment. So that contributed to the drop in
exactly.
trading volumes too. Um,
So yeah, it's an outsized portion of the market. There was an interesting event-driven thing that caused the market to become sort of like lopsided, right? With effectively dealers all on for the most part, on a net basis, all on one side of the trade, and then the market moved against them. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward story in that sense. Um, that can always happen, but again, because the this also mostly happens when price is moving quickly in general. Like, not, of course, the gamma squeeze can amplify the intensity of an upward move, but we were up a lot that day. We were up almost
Yeah,
3%, right?
that was
So
a
like
big pump day.
that's a pretty big move in terms of volatility trading. So
Yeah.
if you march slowly, everybody has time to get their ducks in a row and hedge appropriately. But when you start to move quickly, that's when things can get exciting. I mean,
Yeah, so
that's what we saw.
yeah, so
I guess that's where
I
a lot
looked
is.
at kind of like some of your charts too, and there's um the way the dealers are positioned right now, you look at like 37,000. But what you're saying is that there would have to be certain circumstances around that to see the same thing again, whether that's near an expiration date, whether there's a catalyst that causes the price to move really quickly. It doesn't necessarily mean these gamma squeezes are going to happen every time just because of where these dealers are
No, no,
positioned.
no.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I mean, there are other ways to hedge
and there are other
too,
ways to
right?
hedge.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah, it's just you're just so close to expiry. Like, that might be the only good way to hedge at that point. So,
Got it. No, totally understand. Thanks for clearing that up. I think it just kind of pours fuel on the fire potentially when things move. So it's something to keep an eye on, and the fact that these options are kind of growing in volume while the trading volumes of spot are still suppressed. It's probably something to keep a closer eye on right now. So it makes a lot of sense.